Don't waste your youth. Go out and fight right from the beginning, from the day you leave this incredible university. Go out and fight tough, fight fair, but go out and fight.
President Trump delivering the commencement speech at the University of Alabama yesterday. Hello, happy Friday, and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for May the 2nd, 2025, the 18th Friday of the year, the first of 5 Fridays this month.
It is clear to see the next chapter of the American story will not be written by the Harvard Crimson. It will be written by you, the Crimson Tide.
The president flew from Alabama home to Palm Beach last night, where he'll be participating in the RNC's spring event at Mar-a-Lago tonight before playing some golf, I would imagine, this weekend. Yesterday, we ended with Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight Committee, talking about the budget, which became the topic of the day after President Trump mentioned the one big, beautiful bill during his comments at the National Day of Prayer event. But first, the big news. We go to American Agenda.
We have some breaking news. We're going to read it for you right now. A True Social post from President Trump on Mike Waltz. Katrina, he's going to be promoted to, or it will have to go through, but ambassador to the United Nations. So he's not out entirely.
That's right. A soft landing there, if you will. And here is that post from the president. I'll read it through because there's another nugget in there. I am pleased to announce that I will be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations from his time in uniform on the battlefield, in Congress, and as my national security advisor. Mike Waltz has worked hard to put our nation's interests first. I know he will do the same in his new role. In the interim, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as national security advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Together, we will continue to fight tirelessly to make America and the world safe again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So lots of movement. But again, President Trump just moving forward and keeping his promises to the country.
Yes, and being very transparent about it, General. Your thoughts on what we just broke here?
Didn't have any of this on my bingo card this morning. I'm going to promise you that. But hey, look, this is good. So they're going to put Mike Waltz in a role that I know that he'll excel at. And we can just end the palace intrigue right here. That's very good for the country when we consider how dangerous this world is and the priorities that are in the world for the president to work. And he's bringing over Secretary Rubio, who's got the unique role of Secretary of State. That's going to streamline things and make them very efficient while the president finds a national security advisor that he's comfortable with. And I think it's a very smart move. It does sound like it was planned, very well orchestrated. This isn't a fit or a sporadic thing. And so good. This is good.
Dr. Grant, just about out of time, but want to get your thoughts on this.
Oh, I agree. Marco Rubio, a huge success story. And now, like Henry Kissinger, who also had both those jobs, but in a different order, Rubio was so successful right out of the gate with Panama and so many other issues. So his star is on the rise. He'll do great things for America in both jobs.
Dr. Rebecca Grant of the Lexington Institute and retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt on American Agenda with Katrina Zish and Bob Brooks, who we will hear more from in a little bit. You know what else wasn't on the bingo card yesterday, as General Holt said? The president signing an executive order aimed at slashing public subsidies, a.k.a. funding, to PBS and NPR, something he has hinted about in the past for what he says is their bias in broadcasting. The heads of both NPR and PBS, you may remember, were on Capitol Hill like end of March, beginning of April, for a hearing with the House DOJ subcommittee. The White House announced the signing in a social media post late yesterday, saying the media outlets receive millions from taxpayers to spread radical woke propaganda disguised as news. For more on the media, let's go to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Let me take another opportunity to remind you that the lion's share of those claiming to be journalists betrayed us all. The vast majority of them representing outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBS, ABC, CBS, NBC, all the left-wing compromised fake news sources in America were complicit in hiding the truth about Joe Biden's diminished mental capacity. In so doing, they placed all of our lives at grave risk. They were willing to sacrifice you and your family for the unchallenged power of their favorite party. the Democrats. And they were willing to do this regardless of how much damage those Democrats did to this country and to our people. In fact, some of these sickos in the press protected Democrats because of all the damage they were doing and would do. President Trump was right about the fake news press. A helpful reminder about who our friends are. That's my focus in today's preamble. President Trump has been telling the truth about the majority of the biased press for years now.
Violence, dissent, and using the full force of government, law enforcement, and the media. Because the media, those people right there, they're corrupt, largely corrupt. They are truly the enemy of the people. They are.
And like their favorite party, the Democrats, the left-wing and unfair press keep confirming for us their enemy status. Let's review where we have been. The White House's inclusion of the new media has put an exclamation point on the reality that for the better part of the last 30 years, a conservative perspective has been kept out of the White House press briefing room. Stated another way, through the fake news organizations themselves or the efforts of the left-wing White House Correspondents Association, questions asked through a conservative lens were simply not allowed. The subtle but effective message was that only the left's perspective was valid and worthy of addressing at the White House. Before Trump, even Republican presidents accepted this unfair and frankly insane dynamic that told over half the country that their perspective on news and government didn't really matter or count. But after decades of lies, unequal standards, and open arrogance, culminating in the press hiding Joe Biden's mental incapacity, threatening the lives of millions of Americans, our people are finally seeing and rejecting the notion that left-wing bias equals journalism. Today, Stephen Miller gave the left-wing press what they have earned, after many of them have adopted Democrat talking points rather than asking journalistic, tough, and fair questions.
Talk about due process. The Biden administration made the decision to give extensive due process to two Tren de Aragua terrorists that were apprehended at the border. Those two men kidnapped a young girl named Jocelyn Ungary from her family. They beat her, they sexually assaulted her, they tortured her, they stripped her, they murdered her, and they dumped her body. If I offered any one of you a rent-free home with no taxes to pay in any of these gang neighborhoods, and I said your neighbors are MS-13 terrorists or Mexican mafia or Sinaloa cartel or Tren de Aragua, I couldn't pay you to live there. But yet you, with your coverage, are trying to force innocent Americans to have these people as their neighbors, and that one day their daughter may be abducted from their home and raped and murdered.
That's right, because leftists, whether they be in the Congress or in the press, they would never live under the conditions they tee up for we the little people. What does it say about the press that they would refuse to cover a story about the deaths of our children because those deaths are directly resultant from Democrat policies? Aren't those the actions of an enemy?
And pretty much as Chris was doing his show yesterday, a federal judge blocked the Trump administration from deporting Venezuelans from a Texas prison to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act. Again, citing a due process, or I should say lack of due process, back to the Chris Salcedo Show.
A fake news Democrat stenographer today asked a question of Stephen Miller. And I know this is going to shock all of you out there, but she asked the question without revealing the full story so she could preserve her anti-Trump narrative over news.
Stephen, this morning GM is putting a dollar figure on how much the president's tariffs will impact the company. The CEO says tariffs will cost GM between $4 and $5 billion this year. The CEO of Ford says he can't commit to not raising prices because of tariffs. Is the administration open to doing more to give automakers relief?
Okay, so listening to that question, which featured General Motors and Ford, you're supposed to believe that the automakers oppose the tariff, trade, and foreign policy strategy being implemented by President Trump. Again, I know you'll be shocked, but the fake reporter didn't tell the whole story.
Well, first of all, Ford is really different. We make 80% in the U.S., more than any other manufacturer. In fact, we made 400,000 more vehicles than our next competitor, and that would fill up the entire island of Manhattan. That's how big of a gap we've made. So, look, we think this is really great for the country. We really support the president's initiative. We never left the America on car production.
Wow. Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, supports President Trump's tariff strategy, including his carve-outs for U.S. automakers who, like Ford, make their cars and parts right here in America for the most part. Perhaps the CEO of Ford also recognizes that as trade barriers that other nations currently impose on us come down, it will be a boon for his business, many others, as new markets are opened up. Wouldn't Ford's support of the president's strategy have been, kind of helpful information for that reporter to put out there? But see, that would have disrupted the Trump tariff bad narrative, so it wasn't included.
Great stuff, as always, from Chris Salcedo, host of The Chris Salcedo Show. That's 4 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. Chris also talked about Kamala Harris's bizarre appearance at some event, which I really didn't even want to mention or give coverage of. But since both Rob Finnerty and Rob Schmitt talked about it, here you go.
One of the worst people in political America is back, and she is exactly who she was the day she lost to Donald Trump.
What you can't see is Kamala laughing, giggling, and waving her hands all around.
And Dougie is here, too. Doug Emhoff, who cheated on his wife with the kid's nanny, then got her pregnant, then got a divorce. And if it were anyone else, I wouldn't care. But the media covered that all up so they wouldn't hurt Kamala. Nothing about that on MSNBC, nothing in the New York Times, not even a question. Instead, for 106 days, America got this.
An interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny. I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this. And to me, it's the right thing to do, support women.
Okay, what a sad, sad room this was last night in Kamala's first big speech since she lost the election to Donald Trump, which has got to sting. That's really embarrassing for any Democrat. Hillary, Joe, Kamala. She lost the popular vote, the House, the Senate, all 7 battleground states. She lost them all. And 6 months later, Kamala Harris still hates America just as much as she did on Election Day.
Now, of course, I recognize that America has never fully lived up to these ideals, that for all the gains we've made, the American dream has for decades been slipping further out of reach for so many, and that the American people deserve leaders who make their lives better.
America has never fully lived up to these ideals. Spoken like somebody who not only hates America, but also just doesn't get America, which is ironic coming from our border czar. Under Kamala's watchful eye, at least 15 million criminal illegal aliens crossed into our country. And Kamala, from the bottom of my heart and everyone watching this program right now, if America is so darn bad, why is everyone coming to America? If we're so awful, why is everything we do the envy of the rest of the world? We are the only country on the planet with something called the American dream, which Kamala Harris is in many ways proof of and a product of. A woman of very limited intelligence, mixed race, daughter of immigrants, a woman of no particular political accomplishment who almost made it to the White House, a woman whose career started, like so many political careers, with the help of a mentor, or in Kamala's case, a mentor that you also sleep with, a mentor who also happened to be the very married mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, who we have spoken to several times on this program. I also wanted to play this. Again, coming from anyone else, this is just a line in a speech. But coming from this woman, the impact is so much different. And the saddest part, she doesn't even see the irony.
For all the gains we've made, the American dream has for decades been slipping further out of reach for so many, and that the American people deserve leaders who make their lives better. and make our country stronger.
We deserve leaders who make our lives better and make our country stronger. I completely agree, but I have a question. Did Kamala make our lives any better? Did Kamala and Joe do anything, and we mean that honestly, did they do anything to make the lives of average Americans better or safer? War in Ukraine, war in Gaza, inflation over 9%, record high credit card debt, record high gas prices, mortgage rates over 9%. Everything was more expensive when Kamala was vice president. Instead of Doge, our country was DEI.
Rob Finnerty is the host of Finnerty, 8 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax, and he was only getting warmed up at that point. I would encourage you to go back and watch the whole show. And let's hear what Rob Schmitt had to say about it.
Kamala Harris has finished her election loss grieving period and has returned to remind American voters exactly why they didn't vote for her, why every single county, state, and demographic moved toward Donald Trump in the last election and away from the weirdness that is Kamala. Her 16-minute speech last night was as ridiculous as her campaign, as ridiculous as her entire political career. The most viral moment was the elephant story, which was her way of emphasizing the importance of protecting vulnerable people from Donald Trump.
Who saw that video from a couple of weeks ago? The one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake? Everybody's asking me what you've been thinking about these days. Well, so in the video, for those who haven't seen it, here those elephants were. And as soon as they felt the earth shaking beneath their feet, they got in a circle and stood next to each other to protect the most vulnerable.
Yes. The Democrats actually put up a cheesy kindergarten teacher to run the most powerful country in the world last year. Kamala is talking about protecting the most vulnerable. I guess she means members of transnational gangs and cartels. I don't know. Because Democrats consistently ignore those people that are actually vulnerable in our country. When an innocent person is victimized by a dangerous criminal or an illegal immigrant or a gang member, you notice that Democrats completely disappear, right? They don't care about those stories at all. They refuse to talk about them. They only show up when they smell a potential injustice committed against a lifelong scumbag. A very warped ideology is now fully in control of this mutant political party. Many in the party seem totally lost. New York Congressman Dan Goldman is now claiming that Trump has cognitive issues. He's talking about the 25th Amendment right now. And just a reminder, here he was talking last year about Joe Biden.
I was in Israel on October 7th, as you know, and President Biden was nice enough to call me. And I can tell you, this was the day before that interview, I can tell you he was sharper than anyone I've spoken to.
Joe Biden in 2024 was sharper than anyone he had ever spoken to. But Donald Trump, we might need the 25th Amendment. He's cognitively inclined.
Rob Schmitt tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. We heard from White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller in that Chris Salcedo segment a little bit earlier, but listen to him after seeing the Kamala video.
It was a great reminder to the American people of just how blessed we all are that the leader sitting in the Oval Office today is President Donald Trump and not President Kamala Harris. It was a helpful reminder of just what a travesty and a tragedy that would have been. It would have been the end of America. And it gives me a chance to bring this whole thing home. If we continued on this road of radical regulation, choking off American energy, sending our supply chains to foreign countries, taxing our economy to death, pushing this cancerous woke ideology on our children, ending merit, ending scientific innovation, ending public safety, allowing, everyone goes to the stores these days, everything's locked up, criminals roam free, law-abiding citizens under the previous administration were punished while gangbangers were given red carpet treatment. Democrats, of course, are still giving gangbangers red carpet treatment.
Trump is right. That guy is absolute gold, right? Stephen Miller. I would want him on my team no matter what kind of team it was. And what about this? China, for some reason, is now saying that COVID came from America and not from a lab in Wuhan. Remember Dr. Deborah Birx, head of the Trump COVID team? Well, she spoke with Katrina Zish and Bob Brooks on American Agenda yesterday.
Now, this comes as President Donald Trump and U.S. intelligence agencies doubled down on claims that COVID-19 did indeed leak from a Chinese lab. A congressional panel and the FBI have both pointed to the lab leak theory as the most likely explanation as well.
Joining us to discuss, former White House COVID response coordinator, Dr. Deborah Birx. Doc, thanks for coming on. Good to see you.
Glad to be with you.
Okay, just generally, what are your thoughts on the origin of COVID-19?
Well, first, we know how this virus traveled around the globe. So let's be clear. It went from China to many Southeast Asia countries, including South Korea, then traveled. There was 2 introductions into the United States, one late, probably January, into the West Coast directly from China, and a second through Europe, probably a little bit later into the mid-February timeframe. We've known that forever. We've known how this virus travels. And critically, I think the most important thing from my perspective, we know China was building hospitals in January. We now know, and we have known, the timeline. And you all know it because you've experienced it. The virus circulates in the community, first among young people. They don't get sick. Many of them don't have any symptoms. It gets to the parents. It gets to the older group, and then it's hospitalizations. And then weeks later, you have deaths. So that whole cycle takes us back to the early December timeframe for the first cases in China.
And also with the China lab leak, again, as you said, it is so easily transmissible between humans. So people potentially in the lab who likely, I guess, first got it may not even have known they had it. And again, so you're saying the timeline really pans out that there really isn't a better explanation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it could have been, I know that there was virus present at the wet market, but it could have been brought there by humans. I mean, we know that humans were infecting cats and dogs and other wildlife. So this virus was circulating in China late November, early December. It didn't get to the United States until the January, February timeframe. Viruses We've had accidents in labs for decades.
Dr. Birx, expand on that. That can happen, this aspect of lab leaks.
Correct. So even with HIV, there were individuals who got HIV from a lab exposure. And with this case, we know a lot of lab technicians are younger. So you're absolutely right. Just like you just said, very often they wouldn't even have had symptoms unless they exposed themselves and infected their grandparents. And so it's very common for this to happen potentially. And that's what's frustrated me over this last 4 years is we kept talking about wet markets and zoonotic events. That's transmission from animals to humans. But we haven't spent any time really working on additional safety requirements for laboratories as they work with viruses.
Dr. Birx, obviously you've worked with other countries, their health departments just as well. So China, they're accusing the U.S. being the originator of this. Would they ever, the CCP, ever tell the truth to protect themselves? No.
They're never going to disclose those original samples, which they must have from the November, December timeframe. And they're never going to tell us that they actually know that their virus was circulating in 2019.
Wow. All right. Dr. Birx, always just fascinating speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us on American Agenda. I hope you come back soon.
So there you go, Dr. Deborah Birx. China is never going to release the documents, which have probably been destroyed or, locked away somewhere, and are never going to tell us what they actually know. That actually sounds like it could be the next premise of a Jason Statham movie or something, right? All right, as we wrap it up for the week, today is National Space Day, created in 1997 by aerospace company Lockheed Martin to get students interested in aerospace careers and to celebrate the wonders of space. Oddly enough, on this Space Day, Thousands of Lockheed Martin employees are striking over pay and benefit disputes as the company reports record profits. Today is also International Harry Potter Day. I have to mention it for those folks, right? A big day in London and at Universal Studios here in Orlando, probably at Universal Studios in California as well. If you're into that, there you go. Today's your day. It's also the first Friday of the new month, which means the big jobs report was released this morning. There's going to be a lot of talk about this today. The non-farm payroll report showing 177,000 jobs added to the economy in April. Much more than the 133,000 that analysts had predicted. Was a little bit less than the February's 185,000, but again, way more than what was predicted, and the stock markets opened sharply higher off of the news after the markets closed higher yesterday. President Trump this morning is again urging Fed head Jerome the Profit Killer Powell to cut interest rates as the economy continues to recover. This morning, Shell Oil posted earnings of $5.8 billion, also easily beating Wall Street expectations. Company announced another stock buyback if you own shares of Shell Oil. Yesterday, I gave you the heads up on Amazon, right? They reported earnings of $1.59 a share on revenue of $171 billion. $171 billion for 3 months. Easily beating analysts' expectations as well, but numbers from their cloud business were a little shy of what analysts were hoping for, and then they had to say something about tariffs, how it could affect next quarter's earnings, and everyone sort of lost their mind. Shares down about $1.50. By the way, $1.59 per share was 22 cents higher than the estimate. That's basically insane, or the analysts just don't really know what they're doing. On the crypto market, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were mostly flat. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin is at 96,800 and change. XRP is at 222. So President Trump is at Mar-a-Lago, where he will almost definitely be speaking again about the jobs report and the economy and his executive order to cut funding to public broadcasting. All right, keep up with all of the news throughout the day and the weekend on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Make sure you have the Newsmax app on your phone as well so you can listen anywhere, anytime, and stay up to date. It starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, including the Wake Up America Weekend Edition on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday Report, Sunday Agenda, America Right Now with Tom Basile, The Savage Nation on Sunday with Michael Savage, Rita Cosby, Wendy Bell, documentaries, special programming, and so much more throughout the weekend. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend, safe weekend. Hopefully you'll get to do some of the things you love to do on the weekends. And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.